Hi, I'm Dr. Catherine Hughes from Crime Psych. Today's psychological analysis is of Jerry Odum, and he killed his 59-year-old girlfriend, Vicky. Robert Gibbs asked me to do an analysis of this case, so thank you so much for suggesting this. However, this case is going to be mostly based on guesswork because of the lack of background information available on this offender. Vicky Edge was 59 at the time that she was killed. She ran a very successful spa business in Florida, and she was very much loved by those around her. She was always helping others. She used dating websites to look for a partner. I know from experience how unpleasant this can be. You meet so many odd people and you get sent all kinds of images that you didn't ask for. You very quickly learn to get a sense of people before you've even gone out on a date with them. In 2020, she met Jerry Odum, and the pair hit it off straight away. They had a whirlwind romance and planned to marry very, very quickly, not long after they'd met. I don't know the exact date that they met, but it was a few months before August when she was killed, so possibly in May or June. Despite not knowing each other that long, they were planning on marrying in the October of that same year. Now, to me, this would mean red flags coming up straight away. But when you're in that kind of situation, it sometimes isn't that easy to spot the red flags. I guess that ability to spot things that might be slightly off is only really strengthened by being in abusive or manipulative relationships in the past and learning from it. Vicky Edge had probably never been in a relationship of that type, and so she didn't really see what the problem was. The stability of a loving relationship was what Vicky had wanted for a long, long time. She believed that he was the one, Mr. Right, so to speak. Therefore, she didn't see a need to wait any longer before they got married. Odum had said that he was going to buy them a house by a lake when they got married. He'd even give Vicky a cheque for $15,000 and told her to get started on the wedding plans as soon as she could. On the 7th of August, Vicky was getting ready to leave for work that morning. Odum told her that he had a surprise for her. He then put a blanket over her head, leading her into the living room. There, Odum hit her over the head with a baseball bat several times. He'd actually been out and bought that bat a few days earlier. Odum admitted to the police that Vicky had been screaming as he hit her, but he carried on delivering the blows to her. Then he used that bat to choke her to death. We know that so-called normal people, well, the majority of us don't go round acting all caring and loving to somebody and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, have some sort of a psychotic rage and an outburst of anger that leads to murder. At this point in the case, I did start to think and wonder perhaps he had some sort of mental health condition, such as psychosis or schizophrenia. But after giving that some thought, I don't think that he did. This wasn't something that had happened on the spur of the moment. He'd gone out and bought that baseball bat a few days earlier from Walmart. He'd planned to kill her days before he actually went through with it. This also rules out the possibility of an argument and raised tempers leading to a heat of the moment outburst. He even had guns in the house, but he told the police in his interview that he decided not to go down that route. He said that using a gun would be noisy and would alert the neighbours. His thinking here is with a focus of getting away with it. He's thinking about the repercussions of him being found out, and that is the only reason he chose not to use a gun. The reason he gave the police for killing her is that he had no money and the cheque that he'd given her a few days before would bounce. He simply didn't want her to know that he was broke, so he decided that the only way out of it would be to kill her. He didn't love her, that's for sure. Anybody who loves someone would have come clean about it. Even if they didn't have any money, he could have told her that he didn't have the money, or he could have even broken off the relationship. Vicky, by all accounts, was a lovely woman, and she didn't seem as though she was the type to be bothered about money at all. She just wanted to have found an intimate relationship and was thrilled to have found her Mr. Right. From what I've read about it, if he had have told her that he had no money, she wouldn't have been bothered and she would have paid for the wedding herself. Vicky went above and beyond for her clients at the spa. Away from work, she was known in the community for raising money and for charities, volunteering in women's shelters and spending time with the elderly. She was even talking about donating a kidney. She sounds like a fairly intelligent woman. This means that she would have probably noticed if there was anything obviously wrong with Odum. Her friends were absolutely thrilled for her and they couldn't wait to meet him. Obviously, they were concerned though that things were moving very fast between them, but Vicky seemed happy. She even sent him a birthday card that read, "I'm so thankful God put us together. Looking forward to many more years together." And this indicates that, to me, that he wasn't violent. He showed no signs at all of being abusive at that stage. After he killed her, he removed the registration plate off her car and drove around for 30 miles looking for a hotel to stay in. He spent the night at the hotel because he didn't want to go back to the house where the crime scene was. He told the police, "I couldn't bring myself to stay there with a body." Now, this is quite significant from a psychological perspective. He didn't use her name. He didn't even refer to her as a person. He simply calls her a body, as though it was some sort of banal object which lacked any significance to him. So far, I've ruled out any kind of mental health condition causing some type of psychosis or a rage episode. Vicky trusted him, and it was clear to everyone around her that she'd fallen deeply in love with him. There was no evidence of any kind of domestic abuse or manipulation either. I've also ruled out the possibility of this being an event that happened in the heat of the moment. He went out to purchase the bat days before. He told her that morning that he had a surprise for her, covered over her head with a blanket, and then started attacking her. There are no reports of him being violent in the past, no reports of him being divorced, no reports of abusive relationships prior to this one. And this led me to consider whether he was a narcissist. Narcissistic personality disorder is a mental condition which people have an inflated sense of their own importance. They have a deep need for excessive attention and admiration. They have troubled relationships and lack empathy for other people. But behind that mask of the extreme confidence, there's a very fragile self-esteem that's vulnerable to even the slightest criticism. Those who have narcissistic personality disorder are in love with this idealised, grandiose image of themselves, and they're in love with this inflated image because it allows them to avoid any deep feelings of insecurity. They use various tactics to support their inflated ego and their sense of entitlement. And it's these needs to prop themselves up that bring about the negative behaviours. Narcissists can be very magnetic and very charming. They're very good at creating a fantastical, flattering self-image that draws people in. We're drawn to their apparent confidence and their lofty dreams. And the shakier a person's own self-esteem, the more seductive the allure toward that person will be. It's easy to get caught up in their web, thinking that they'll fulfill our longing to feel more important, feel more alive. But it's a fantasy. And for Vicky, it was a very costly one at that. A common tactic of narcissists is to love bomb their potential mates. I believe this is where Jerry and Vicky were in their relationship. He was lavishing attention on her. He made her believe that she was the most important woman on the planet. He made promises that he could never deliver. He'd pushed their relationship to move along very quickly by promising to buy her a house by the lake when she married him. I believe that if she had have still been alive, he would have gone on to manipulate, degrade, control and dominate her. Vicky is a very good target for him because she had her own business. The other thing that would have attracted him to her was her deep need to be in a loving relationship. What we know now is that Vicky had told her brother on the Wednesday that she'd been diagnosed with stage 2 colon cancer. Vicky was devastated, her brother said, because that'd mean that she would be ruled out as a kidney donor, and she spent her last full day alive looking for an alternative donor for the woman in need. If we again consider that he's a narcissist, there is no doubt that she would have told him about this diagnosis before telling her brother, and this could possibly have devalued her in his eyes. He saw the possibility that his efforts to love bomb her might end up with him gaining nothing, making her less valuable in his eyes. Neighbours said that while Vicky was lying dead in the house, that they'd seen Odum out walking her dog as though nothing was wrong. He'd apparently asked for the time, and he'd mentioned to the neighbours that Vicky was sleeping. Obviously, at the time they had no idea that he'd beaten her to death. He doesn't ever appear to be upset or disturbed at any point. He does and says things with a view to helping him look less guilty. While all of this is going on, her friends and family had become concerned that they'd not heard from Vicky in a couple of days. Her brother and his wife went to her house, but she wasn't there. So they managed to find an address for Odum on the internet, and they went round there. They saw her car on the driveway without its registration plates. They looked through the windows and they could hear her dog, Buddy, barking, but there was no answer. So her brother and his wife decided to call the police to request them to carry out a welfare check at Odum's property. When officers arrived there, Odum answered the door and they asked if he knew where Vicky was. And he said, quite calmly, "She's inside, but I have to tell you something first. She's been dead for 2 days." The police went inside and found Vicky's body in the living room. She'd been beaten around the head. Outside, Derek and his wife were told the sad news. When police questioned Odum, he first claimed that he'd found Vicky dead there 2 days earlier on the 6th of August. Police knew that was unlikely because it didn't explain why he didn't call the police when he first saw her. But his story very quickly changed into a confession. So, without any further information on this case and of Jerry Odum's background, my best guess is that Vicky was a victim of a narcissist. I do hope that you found today's video interesting and that you've learned something new from it. If you do want to learn more about offender profiling and aspects of criminal psychology, there are online resources, online courses, blogs and vlogs on my website, and I've put all that information in the description. So thank you so much for watching then. Bye for now.